Hello and welcome to the HOPR training video on how to set up and use your local HOPR development cluster. In this video, I'm going to show you how to start your first local cluster in Gitpod and perform simple interactions between local HOPR nodes. You can also read a tutorial on our docs page at docs.hoprnet.org. To get started, let's first open up our main GitHub repository at github.com/hoprnet. This contains the entire codebase of HOPR and also a Gitpod setup we will use in this showcase. For purpose of this video, we're going to use our latest release codenamed Lisbon. This release is on release/Lisbon branch, so you can check it out. Now, if you have your Gitpod account set up, there are a couple ways to start a Gitpod with your local HOPR cluster. If you have a Gitpod extension installed in your browser, you should see a green button here on the right side that says Gitpod. Or, if you don't have it, you can simply prepend gitpod.io hashtag to the URL in your browser like I do. This will bring up the Gitpod environment setup. If you're starting this for the first time, it takes around 5 minutes to get everything in place. Once the main workbench opens up, you can monitor the progress by toggling the Environment Setup console window on the right-hand side. This local setup creates a set of 5 HOPR nodes, all interconnected between each other so they can form a complete graph. Payment channels are also created from each node to all other nodes and funded, making sure all nodes can send multiple hop messages. Anyone in this network can talk to anyone. We can tell that a setup is done by seeing the following message in the terminal. There are also other terminal windows for us to use. Let's bring up the other terminal called the command window into the main pane for better readability. The bottom terminal now shows us the information about all 5 HOPR nodes running in the local cluster. Each node exposes a REST API endpoint, which we can use to send commands, and also a WebSocket endpoint. For this showcase, we'll be using mainly the REST API endpoint. Each node contains a documentation for the REST API we can explore. Let's click on the link of the first node to see the Swagger documentation page for the REST API. If you have pop-ups disabled like I do, let's click on to open up the pop-up. Here we can see some nice documentation of all the REST API endpoints. We can also try them out interactively. Let's, for example, check the account addresses endpoint. This API is called using HTTP GET, and it will simply give us information about the addresses of the node. We can call this API interactively from this page. But as you might expect, the API is not public, but rather protected by an API token. Let's set up the token first by clicking at the Authorize button. The API token for all the nodes in this local cluster is *local-testing-123. Now that a token is set, we can click on the Try It Out button in Account Addresses endpoint and send the request to the node. As you know, the HOPR protocol has 2 layers, a transport layer for data and a payment layer for incentivization. This corresponds to 2 addresses we got in the API response from the first node. the native address for the payment layer, which is basically a wallet address of the node, and the HOPR address, which is an address which we use to send and receive messages. The Swagger page also shows us the curl command that we could use to call the same API endpoint from the terminal. Let's copy the curl command and try it out from the terminal back in Gitpod. This time, we're going to use the main command window. Let's paste and run the command. We can see we got the same result, although in not such a nice format. Now we can try running some other commands using the command line interface. I have prepared some commands calling various APIs on node number 1. Let's visit the page at tinyurl.com/hello-hopper. All these commands are going to query the node number 1 in the cluster using the REST API. The next command will show us the balances in the node's wallet. Another command will show us all the open channels from and to the node number 1, including how much stake is allocated per channel. As you can see, there are 4 incoming payment channels from the other nodes, and also 4 outgoing channels to the other nodes. This also includes the balances per each channel. Finally, let's take a look at the command that allows us to send messages across nodes. Let's go back to the Swagger page and look at the Messages REST API endpoint. This API is delivered via HTTP POST and accepts 2 arguments. The first one is the message body, and the second one is the HOPR address of the recipient. There's also an optional path argument in which we can manually specify the relay nodes the message is going to use before arriving to the final recipient. If we omit this argument, your node will automatically find a viable random path with 3 hops. Let's take the next demo command. As you can see, this command sends a message from node number 1 to node number 2 with hello world message in its body. Let's go back to Gitpod, and this time we can also bring up the other 2 terminals. These are connected to the WebSocket interface of node number 1 and node number 2. The one on the left is node number 1, and the one on the right is node number 2. Now let's run the command that sends message from node number 1 to node number 2 and observe the right window. We can see that node number 2 has received the message. The node number 1 has automatically selected a path consisting of 3 hops. The final hop has delivered the message to node number 2. Let's run the final command that sends the message in the opposite direction. As we can see in the terminal on the left, the message was successfully delivered to node number 1 from node number 2. Finally, I'd like to show you one of our demos that we have at the demo page on our docs. Let's go once again to docs.hoppernet.org. And let's go into the developers section. You can see we have a couple demos, including the full guide and the source code. You can also test the live demos on the page using your Gitpod setup that you're running right now. For example, in the Boomerang app, you can specify the WebSocket and the HTTP REST API endpoint addresses of any node running in your Gitpod. You also need to specify the API token as well. For example, addresses of the endpoint of the first node can be obtained by reading a certain environment variable in the command window. The REST API URL of the first node can be read from the HOPR node 1 HTTP URL variable. We can simply copy-paste this value back into the demo page. The same thing we can do with the WebSocket URL. This time, it is a HOPR node 1 WS URL. All of this is of course documented at the docs page for the Boomerang app. Let's not forget to replace the protocol with WSS instead of HTTPS. Finally, let's enter the security token once again. We can also change the message. The purpose of this Boomerang app, as the name suggests, is to send the message back over to ourselves. You can see that the message has been received and displayed right below the Send Message button. And that's all for this demo video. Don't forget that HOPR also offers a fully programmatic TypeScript interface that allows you to integrate HOPR Node into your application. For further information, please refer to our docs page. Thank you for watching, and let's change data privacy for good by using HOPR. Also, if you're interested in joining us, we have some open positions, including remote ones, listed at hoppernet.jobbase.io.